Welcome back to Beyond the Royal Headlines. We had a break last month, and we're back this month with a brand new live episode. And we're going to be talking to Edvard Ernst and his journey from working in a homeopathy hospital to doing battle with Charles over alternative medicines. Before I get into that and introduce Edzard, obviously, I'll remind you that this is a webinar or program which is produced by Republic, and you can check us out at republic.org.uk to find out more about us and what we do, what we believe, what we campaign on, and how you can get involved. You can also, of course, go to our shop and buy merchandise and books, and we will be talking about Edzard's book, which is available on the Republic shop. Charles, the Alternative Prince, an Unauthorized Biography, and they've been selling well the last few days. So do grab a copy whilst they are still in stock. And yeah, as I said, look out for, if you're not already a member, see how you can join and get involved and find out more. And these are Beyond the Royal Headlines is the first Tuesday of every month. So on September the 2nd, we're going to have Andrew Lowney, who's got a new book out about Prince Andrew. The book comes out the middle of August, and yeah, the start of September we'll be chatting to him about all the revelations, some of which are already in the press this week. So yeah, check that out. The details are already on the website, republic.org.uk/events, and you can register for that next episode. So Edzard, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi.
Now, you have, as I sort of suggested, that you started out a long time ago working in homeopathy, and you sort of made that journey to become the world's first professor of complementary medicine at the University of Exeter. Can you sort of tell us a bit about that journey and how your sort of views on the subject shifted?
Well, my journey started very early. As a boy, I was treated by a homeopath. Um, our family doctor was a homeopath. My father was a conventional doctor. Used homeopathy apparently occasionally, but our family doctor was quite a famous homeopath in Germany, a family friend. And for me, homeopathy was just medicine. There was no difference until I studied medicine. And then, of course, I realized that it was quite different. Um, uh, but despite all these differences, I was somewhat fascinated. And as it happened, my first job as a junior doctor was in a homeopathic hospital, actually the only homeopathic hospital at the time. That was 1977. So that's when I learned how to practice homeopathy, not just homeopathy, but several other alternative treatments for a while, and I continued to be fascinated, not least because patients did get better, um, and I was impressed for a little while. Then I changed back into conventional medicine, uh, and at one stage I left Germany, came to London, and was trained as a scientist, a clinical scientist, did basic research for quite a long time, then went back to Germany, specialized in physical medicine and rehabilitation, and in parallel pursued my interest in this field of basic science. Eventually, I got a job as a professor in Hanover, Germany, and quite shortly after, I became head of department and professor of physical medicine and rehabilitation in Vienna. Um, and there, being the boss, I was able to say, let's do this research or that research. So we did quite a lot in alternative medicine. I ought to say also physical medicine rehabilitation is a field that overlaps greatly with alternative medicine. We had uh, acupuncture, we had massage therapy, we had spinal manipulation, and we even did a bit of research into homeopathy during my time in Vienna.
Mm.
And then one day I saw in the New Scientist post advertised Exeter was looking for somebody to become a professor of complementary medicine. I rushed to the World Atlas and looked up where Exeter is and thought that's nice. I ought to say that I was thoroughly cheesed off with Vienna, but
Nice.
that's quite a different subject. Um,
And by this point, had you, I should say to the audience, by the way, there is a Q&A function on Zoom, so please jump in and add your questions there, and we'll put those to Edzard in about 20 minutes or so. But Edzard, by that point, were you already taking a more skeptical view of homeopathy and other alternative medicines?
well, what had changed was that I had been trained as a scientist. Um, Many doctors think they are scientists, but most of them aren't. And when you study medicine, you hardly have time to think, certainly not time to think critically. And um, for me, having time to think, having time to read, I'm referring to my time in London, St. George's Hospital, uh, was a revelation, and that made me question a lot of things. Why did my patients in the homeopathic hospital get better? Was it the homeopathic remedy or was it something else? Uh, Essentially, that was a question that
Yep.
was nagging in the back of my mind, and that motivated me to do research into homeopathy, but also into other alternative treatments, acupuncture, herbal medicine, spinal manipulation, basically.
Mm.
And so yes, my attitude when I went to Exeter had changed
Yep.
in that I knew as a scientist I have to do the best possible research, the most rigorous uh, research possible. Um, I wasn't gonna promote alternative medicine. That certainly wasn't my job as I saw it. Um, I was going to question the assumptions made in alternative medicine.
And this was the first post of its type, is that correct in the world?
Yeah,
And
it was the first post
mm.
of its kind worldwide. Yeah.
And fairly early on, Charles took an interest in your appointment. Was it?
That's interesting. Charles had, in a way, helped create my post. There had been a series of colloquia in the Royal Society of Medicine in the late 80s, and it was one of the rare occasions where Charles actually appeared. He was discussing uh, with other people the issues, and at one stage he said, "This field will not go anywhere." No, somebody else said that. That was Morris Lang. This field will not go anywhere unless we have a professorship at one of our universities.
Mm.
And Morris Lang, uh, uh, being a very rich and generous person, was taken up on this remark and said, "Okay, I'll I'll give 1.5 million for any university who wants that chair." So they shopped around, and no university of high standing wanted the 1.5 million. They didn't mind at the time taking money from big tobacco,
Mm,
but a big alternative was too much to chew on.
right.
Uh, except Exeter, who had a little educational unit for alternative therapists mainly. And they said, okay, okay, we take the money and we advertise, and this is how it happened.
Mm. And am I right in saying that Charles invited or wanted to meet you and you spoke to him and there was some kind of, because I mean later on there was an invitation to be involved in the small wood report. So
Yeah,
was there a fairly positive
my,
relationship at the start?
my first indirect contact with Charles was that at Exeter, my vice chancellor copied me a letter from Charles' secretary who was asking for a copy of my inaugural lecture, uh, which put me a bit in a spot because I don't write up lectures. So I sat down and wrote up my inaugural lecture and sent it to Charles. And he said, "Thank you very much."
Right. And let's, I mean,
Later
I
on,
guess,
I was invited twice, once in St. James's Palace and once at Highgrove.
right, okay. And I mean, at this point, I guess he assumed that if you're going to be a professor of alternative medicine, that you're going to be keen on promoting the idea. But I mean, I guess he doesn't have a scientific mind. Is that fair to say? And I mean, what is his sort of world outlook and world view that caused the clash that came along later?
Yeah, that might be the understatement of the year. Uh, he certainly doesn't have a scientific mind, but and nevertheless was thrilled that he was interested in my post, in my work,
Mm,
and I was sure that if we met, I would get my point across. That, namely, before we start integrating these things into the NHS, we ought to test whether they do more good than harm.
yeah.
It's not a complicated point, and even Charles might have got it. But the occasion, in spite of the two meetings, never occurred because when you're invited at Highgrove, you're invited with 500 other people. Well, I was anyway.
Mm.
So um, I was introduced twice to him, but there was no conversation ever.
Interesting. And then when did what year again was it? Late 90s, was it that you started the Exeter Post?
I started in Exeter in '93.
Oh, right, early 90s. So, and it was a bit later on that then the Smallwood report came forward. How did that?
Yeah, much later.
Oh, right.
Charles had at the same time as I started at Exeter, he had created a foundation for integrated health, integrated medicine. It changed its name several times. Eventually, it was closed under uh, very dubious circumstances. There was money laundering and all sorts of funny stuff. And instead, the College of Integrated Medicine, Integrated Health, was created, and which is a successor organization
Hmm.
led by Michael Dixon, Dr. Michael Dixon, who's now the boss of the medical royal household.
Oh, yes, I remember this came up just after he became king.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that as in the news. So this is a guy who is he a practicing homeopath or just a
No, no, he's a GP.
right?
Yeah, we once upon a time were friends because he worked not far from Exeter,
Hmm.
and and I know for sure he laughs about homeopathy.
That's interesting. But he was in charge of this Institute of Homeopathy that, well, alternative medicine that Charles had set up.
He is he laughs about homeopathy, but not about everything that alternative medicine has to offer. So he himself did some spiritual healing, which is even wackier than homeopathy. And he, in his GP practice in Columpton, he employed all sorts of alternative therapists.
Right. I see. That's interesting. So he's quite happy to dismiss some, but not other alternative therapies.
Yeah.
And then and it was so Smallwood. I mean, tell us who Christopher Smallwood
Smallwood was the last and the last and certainly the most monumental friction I had with Charles and his followers in alternative medicine. And that came about in around 2005. Mr. Smallwood made an appointment to see me at Exeter through my secretary, and when he arrived, he was in the company of two people from a firm called Fresh Minds, who do all sorts of things, writing documents, basically, as I understand it. And Smallwood explained that he understands nothing about alternative medicine or healthcare or medicine, but as a retired banker, he was asked by Charles personally to look into the money implications of more alternative medicine on the NHS.
Yep.
Charles apparently had asked his foundation to do that, but ended up saying to Smallwood that his own foundation is a waste of space. And Smallwood was told by Charles that Dame Porter was supplying the money for writing this report and paying Fresh Minds. I think Smallwood himself wasn't paid. Anyway, they explained that what they were up to, and I said that's very interesting because I have just or am just about to finish a report for the World Health Organization on exactly the same issue, only worldwide. My report, and they wanted it specifically for the NHS England.
Yep.
So I said that's great. I'll give you my WHO report in confidence, and no doubt that helps you a lot. And he said, no, thank you, we don't want it. But we want your name on the report because you're the only professor of complementary medicine in the country, etc., etc. And I said, okay, I'll do what I can. And they buzzed off, and a few months later came a draft report. At this stage, I should say, at no stage did I sign or even agree to confidentiality.
So you hadn't contributed to the report either?
No.
They simply wanted your name on
it. Not a comma.
Right.
So there I was confronted with a report that was really quite amusing because it was full of mistakes, really fundamental mistakes, embarrassing, and it was drawing conclusions from data that didn't exist, and so forth. So I wrote to Smallwood, sent him an email and said, thank you very much. There's plenty of revision necessary on this report, and if you want to, I and my department, at this stage, I had about 20 co-workers.
Yep.
We look into it and bring it up to speed. And he said, no, not really. And then it escalated a bit. The tone became a bit sharper. And I told him that his report looks as though the conclusions were written before they looked at the evidence,
Right.
and he felt a little bit insulted about that. And I said, okay, if it's like this, would you please take my name off the report?
Yeah.
Which he did.
And then the Times, I think it was, got in touch.
Yeah. A little later, Mark Henderson from the Times phoned me. I knew, by that time, I think that's quite important. I knew Mark well. He's an excellent journalist. He was an excellent journalist. He isn't anymore a journalist, and I trusted him,
Hmm.
which is unusual for me trusting a journalist.
Yep.
Uh, and anyway, so we spoke quite freely, and he said, "I have a report from Mr. Smallwood on my desk, and it's about alternative medicine and the NHS, and it looks very interesting. But my first question about it, why aren't you on it?
Right.
You are the only professor in the country." So I told him the story, why I was on it and why I'm no longer on
Yep.
it. And he said, "Well, tell me more." And I said, "Well, I can't really tell you that much, because even though we never talked about confidentiality, but I think it goes without uh, further explanation that I mustn't leak the
Right.
report." And he said, "Well, as I told you, the report is in front of me," and he read me a few passages. So I knew he had the report, and I didn't need to explain any content. Uh, Instead, I explained to him what had happened and how horrendously uh, uh, mistaken the report was
Hmm.
in every single way, both in trivial errors as well as in fundamental errors and in wrong conclusions.
And of course, when this report was to come out, the idea was that it obviously has Charles's stamp of approval, and that's a problem if it's so faulty and they're not willing to listen to very authoritative criticism.
For me, the problem was, and many people have misunderstood that, including the Lancet. Richard Horton felt obliged to make a very nasty comment about me apparently allegedly leaking the report. Uh, the crucial thing was that this wasn't going to be peer reviewed.
Yeah.
There was no peer review. This was Mr. Smallwood had explained to me that this was going to be handed over on the occasion of a little ceremony in the House of Parliament to politicians, and that's where it gets worrying
Yeah.
from my perspective, because I pointed out to Mark Henderson, as I had pointed out to Mr. Smallwood, if the recommendations are implemented, quite a few people will die.
Hmm.
Uh, for instance, there was a recommendation that so and so many millions could be saved if GPs used more homeopathy for asthma patients. Well, people can die of asthma. They do die of asthma if it's not treated properly. And I estimated that this recommendation alone might kill about 150 people per year.
So in a
So
sense,
it was beyond being funny.
yes, in a sense, Charles, through using Christopher Smallwood as his proxy, was directly lobbying politicians to spend more money, public money, through the NHS on homeopathy on the pretext that it would save the NHS a lot of money. Is that?
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because uh, a few so-called scientists had signed up to the report,
Hmm.
uh, and uh, it would have carried a certain weight if I hadn't intervened. So
And I think you also said at the time, and to the Times journalist about the constitutional impact, or the constitutional, the questionable constitutional sort of stepping of the mark.
That was mentioned in passing and made some waves, because I said, as far as I know, Prince Charles shouldn't be meddling in politics.
Yeah.
And clearly that's his politics. I mean, health politics are politics.
Yep.
So that was that made some waves. But for me, the most important thing was that it actually would kill people.
Yeah.
And therefore, even if I had leaked it, it would have been entirely proper to leak it, because these are concerns that are more important than a confidentiality agreement, which I had never given.
Yeah, of course. And when the Times then put out this story about your comments regarding this report, which I guess came out before the report was released, and what was the impact on you, or the reaction, I guess, from Christopher Smallwood and from the palace?
Well, after my conversation with Mark Henderson, the next morning on the way to work, I bought the Times, and it was on the title page of the Times with a rather raunchy headline, which I've forgotten, but it didn't go down very well in certain quarters. On the very same day, Mr. Smallwood sent me an email, the last email that I've ever received from him, and he said, "I will make sure that you regret it."
Nice.
Yeah, very nice, an open threat.
Yeah.
And then nothing happened for 2-3 months, until I got an email from my vice chancellor saying that there was a complaint against me. So what had happened, I learned later, not from the vice chancellor, who never ever talked to me about this. Actually, never ever talked to me about anything.
Still now, right?
And what happened is that he had received that letter from Sir Michael Peat, first private secretary of Prince Charles, starting with the sentence, "I'm writing in my capacity as the first private secretary of Prince Charles."
Yep.
So no question where it actually came from, even though later Prince Charles said he never knew that this letter was written. But to the present day, I find this hard to believe.
Of course, yeah.
So the Vice Chancellor receives that letter. At that stage, I was certainly the person at Exeter who, without wanting it, provoked the most press coverage. My post was unusual, and I had journalists every other day on the telephone for all sorts of things. So whenever there was something going on in alternative medicine, the public interest is still very, very strong.
Yeah.
So I was in the press non-stop. The Vice Chancellor knew that, and he phoned back to Sir Michael and said, "Are you sure that you want me to pursue this? Because as far as I know, Professor Ernst will not take this lying down."
Yeah.
And I was told that Sir Michael said, "Hold on, I'll phone you back." Then he phoned back and said, "Go for it."
Right. So you obviously went back to Wales, or
my vice chancellor, instead of protecting me, which would have been his bloody duty, went for it.
Yeah.
13 months of investigation, I had to take lawyers against my own university. Quite unusual, to put it mildly.
Yep.
And the support broke down. I mentioned that we were about 20 co-workers at the time. Contracts weren't prolonged. Money wasn't flowing anymore.
Right.
Within a very short amount of time, we were just 5 left from 20.
Wow.
So
And you,
they were actively destroying my department while the investigation was going on, and all the time I felt being treated guilty before any
yeah.
judgment was taken.
But they didn't find against you, did you? They basically said that there was no case to answer.
Yeah, eventually a letter arrived and from the vice chancellor and said they have concluded that there's no guilt on my part,
Hmm.
but if I ever had uh, any more burning ethical issues, would I please tell him about it before taking any action? So I sat down and sent him, thank you very much for this invitation. I have a burning ethical issue. My department is being destroyed. And he didn't think that was funny either.
No. And I think this is the part of the tragedy, I guess, is that, on paper you kept your job, but then of course it was becoming untenable and you took early retirement, is that right?
Yeah, well, the tragedy to put this into proper perspective, this will sound pompous, but at the time we were the only department looking critically at alternative medicine, not in this country but worldwide. We were enormously productive, and the crucial thing is that this department was destroyed. My own fate in this is virtually immaterial. Um, I wasn't worried. I was very close to retirement anyway, but I was hoping that it would continue beyond my retirement, but it
And
didn't.
they did ask you to find a replacement, is that right? But that
Yeah,
didn't go anywhere.
I I when the money uh, when the pot of money was empty, I took voluntary retirement. To me, that's important, that voluntary, because lots of people say I was fired.
Yeah.
The fact that I'm still to the present day emeritus professor at Exeter tells you that this isn't true.
Yeah.
Uh, I took voluntary retirement, and meanwhile, the vice chancellor, uh, no, he was still in place, but the uh, director of the medical school had changed, and we had a better relationship, more open relationship, and he said, "I'll re-employ you at half time, so that for half a year, so that together we can find a successor."
Yeah.
Uh, in retrospect, I think that was a very cunning trick to keep me sweet, because there was no earnest uh, activity going on to find a successor. One person, highly qualified, came, and he would have had my support, but he was told that he has to find 100% of his own money. Uh, so that may be okay for junior academics, but you don't get a multi-qualified, high-powered academic under these conditions. So he went back home to Australia, I think he came from, without accepting the job.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, essentially, you crossed Charles, and the suspicion is that they lent on the university, and the university buckled and essentially closed down what was at the time the only critical department looking at alternative medicine, which is
Yeah, yeah.
shocking. And as you said,
In order to understand my attitude about all this,
mm,
I am to the present day quite angry about how my university behaved.
yes,
Uh, and people think that I'm very angry at Charles, which I'm not.
right. But it was the fact that, I mean, I suppose Charles was just being Charles, but the people that should have known better were the people at the university. Is that?
Yeah, the university failed me completely.
Mm,
And as you say, Charles is Charles.
mm. But you, of course, have written. I mean, you've written plenty on the subject of alternative medicines, including, I think, Trick or Treatment with Simon Singh and various other books. And of course, you have written this Charles the Alternative Prince, which is about Charles's perspective, but also his lobbying. So, I mean, what's the sort of the key takeaway from? I mean, what's his? We sort of touched on his worldview and his lack of scientific understanding, but I think you mentioned that he even reveled in the fact that he was anti-enlightenment, and that he believes in quite a lot wide, not just homeopathy, but quite a wide range of alternative medicines. I mean, how would
Well,
you characterize his view on these things?
alternative medicine is a very broad church, and somebody counted more than 400 different modalities,
Mm.
treatments, and diagnostic techniques. So Charles has a unique talent of choosing those which are hopeless.
So there are some things which are going to be, like herbal remedies, which may or may
Yes,
not work.
of
In fact,
course, yeah, yeah.
he always goes
And
for the ones
I
that
should
are
say,
least.
few people have published more convincingly positive data about some alternative treatments than I have.
Right.
So I'm not really against alternative medicine. I'm against quackery. I'm against cheating. I'm against fraud, and I'm for evidence-based medicine.
Yes. Because I think I read some of you saying, you explaining that to you it's either effective medicine or it's not medicine. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
That's why I call it so-called alternative medicine, which also abbreviates into SCAM.
and and you I think you referred to Charles as a snake oil salesman. I mean, what's the worst sort of things that he pushes or believes in himself for his own treatments?
Well, homeopathy is pretty much the worst, uh, because it just defies anything we know about science. It's so utterly implausible. Plus, the actual clinical evidence is squarely against it.
Mm,
But and another one is herbal medicine. There's plenty of good stuff in herbal medicine, but Charles has chosen the aspect of herbal medicine which is traditional herbal medicine, where you go to a herbal practitioner and he diagnoses uh, certain things that he's totally incapable of diagnosing because they don't exist,
yep.
and then gives you an individualized mixture of traditional herbs. If the practitioner is Chinese, then it would be Chinese uh, mixtures, but in Europe we have a very similar tradition. In Tibet we have a similar tradition. It exists all over,
Yep.
and there's no evidence that this individualized approach to herbalism is any good. Quite the opposite. It might be uh, quite dangerous because you get a dozen or more herbal ingredients and they interact, and the likelihood of something poisonous being in there is increased.
But also, I think there's things which I think I'm right in saying that Charles advocated for coffee enemas to combat cancer. Is that one of
Yeah, that's a nice story. That
the? Yeah.
we this was in front of a whole Royal College of physician assembled, and he gave a little speech. And there were cancer specialists. I was present. I'm not a cancer specialist, but I was also invited. And he said he knows of somebody who has been cured by Gerson diet, which is a starvation diet combined with coffee in enemas, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So he was advocating to British cancer specialists uh, one of the worst quackeries that exist in oncology, and they were rather taken aback, as you can imagine.
Well, indeed. And I think this is, and just a reminder to everybody watching, if you do want to jump in the Q&A function, which is probably the button down the bottom of your Zoom screen, if you want to jump in and ask questions, we'll come on to those in a moment, and just drop them in the conversation as they come up. But I think part of this problem is that you said that some of these other herbal things, for example, might be harmful, but some things are harmful by getting in the way of doing other things. They are used literally as an alternative to things which will save your life.
Yeah, that's the danger of homeopathy.
Mm.
If Charles uh, had treated his present illness with homeopathy, he wouldn't be amongst us anymore.
Yes.
As simple as that.
Yeah.
So the royal family, not just Charles, the royal family advocates homeopathy for us, the people, but as soon as they are ill,
Yeah.
they use the best treatments conventional medicine has to offer. And
Indeed.
rightly so, because otherwise they wouldn't survive.
Indeed. And this is this comes back to the whole influence of the royals, because it is this sort of influenced by status, I suppose. Is that the chancellor or vice chancellor of the university, for example, would have been persuaded, not because Charles had any particular authority other than the fact that he was a prince at the time, and for some reason his head, the vice chancellor's head was turned. Is that, I mean, does it worry you that people like this? And is it just royals? I don't know. I don't know whether there are other people pushing these things. There are some celebrities from Hollywood doing this kind of thing. But does it worry you that people like this will use that kind of celebrity status to turn heads, and that can actually have an impact on academics?
It's not worrying, it's infuriating.
Hmm.
Uh, I forgot to mention that my vice chancellor, as well as the dean of the medical school, both got knighted when this was over.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah, and this is again part of that influence that they can wield. I mean, you said we spoke quite some time ago when we made a documentary about 8, 9 years ago, and at the time, homeopathy and other alternative medicines were still being or were still available in parts of the NHS, and you said that a large part of the reason for that was behind the scenes lobbying from people like Charles. I mean, I think I might say that the availability of alternative medicines on the NHS has diminished rapidly, and so that influence perhaps has dwindled as well. Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, homeopathy is a good example again, because the NHS several years back stopped reimbursing homeopathy. Uh, Despite Charles writing his famous spider
Yeah,
letters, lobbying politicians, etc., etc. So the move to stop reimbursing homeopathy was long overdue. Charles managed to delay this move, but didn't manage to stop it,
yeah,
which is encouraging in a way. After all these years, still an optimist, and I know for sure that at least in healthcare, uh, evidence will win the day.
yeah.
And nothing is more stronger than evidence.
And I suppose with healthcare, the big thing is that people do want to survive, and they do want, and doctors do want to cure people. So I suppose there's quite a
Exactly.
compelling motivation to stick with the evidence. But um, the yeah, the influence obviously has carried on. I suppose one of the other things, it's sort of related to the behaviour of the Vice Chancellor, I suppose, is why sort of medical colleges or BMA or whoever invite these people to come and speak when he will then stand there and tell cancer experts that his friend got cured with coffee enemas. I mean, what is that? Is it deference? Is it just are scientists and doctors as fallible as the rest of us when it comes to sort of being deferential to people like the Royals?
Yeah, I think it's that it can't be masochism.
Maybe it is. I mean, we've got a few more questions here. I mean, there's in terms of one question from Adam North here is about the ways in which he exerts his power in medicine. I mean, is it primarily through lobbying, or is he actually funding things himself, or is he just getting funding through these institutes and charities, or is it mainly kind of just sort of the word in the right ear?
Uh, Charles obviously is a rich man, but as far as I know, he doesn't put his own money in it. He convenes a dinner and explains that people have to support his foundation or whatever other initiative, and everybody leaves a check behind. This is how I understand he raises the money. Alternative medicine as a field. Is quite poor in a way, at the same time very rich because the industry around is very poor, and the lone practitioner might be sorry, the industry is quite rich, and the lone practitioner might be quite poor. Not everybody in this field is successful.
Yeah.
But collectively, it's billions that disappear in this sector.
I think you called it a big alternative earlier on, and I think the alternative medicine is a multi-billion pound industry worldwide. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. Well, about currently about 200 billion per year.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously we're talking about a very rich person who has questionable views on health, and Craig A. in Stockdale has raised the obvious question about Trump and people like RFK Jr. Sort of, I mean, some of the bad stuff that Trump said during the COVID epidemic and the sort of the attacks on vaccines and things. Do you worry that we're sort of losing ground again in that sort
Yeah,
of fight against?
I mean, what is happening in America is a pure nightmare. Trump is of course bad enough, but Kennedy is just unspeakable. It's
Mm.
you think either he's mad or he's willfully destroying public health in America. And the worry for us is that this will swap across the ocean and come to us. If the Americans start a pandemic, we are next.
Yes. So the worry is that they create the environment for a pandemic to take hold because there's this culture of
Most definitely,
yeah.
most definitely. Kennedy is doing everything he possibly can to uh, to to limit and discredit vaccinations,
Mm.
not just MMR, but basically all
Just
of them.
just the concept of vaccinations is yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
he pretends to be pro-vaccination and does the opposite.
right. And John Brady was just getting back to the Smallwood report, asking whether there are specific recommendations that might have cost lives that you were particularly worried about, or is it whether it's the overall sort of emphasis on spending within the NHS, or whether there are particular things that gave you great concern?
Well, obviously the emphasis of spending is bad enough because the NHS is chronically strapped for money. And if you pour millions uh, uh, into more or less useless treatments, some of which even dangerous, then this money won't be available for treatments that actually do save lives.
Yeah.
And the danger of not treating serious diseases, we have briefly mentioned. I've briefly mentioned that treating severe asthma with homeopathy isn't a very good idea, and might be a recipe for disaster.
Yes, and so it's kind of it's sort of similar. It's very similar, comparable, I suppose, to what's happening in the United States in sort of essentially undermining this notion that this is the scientific approach to dealing with these things, and sort of saying actually there's this alternative, which in reality is very dangerous. If it's either whether
Yeah,
it's actually dangerous for taking it or dangerous for not doing the scientific method.
that is indeed very similar, except in America it's the government, and here it's the king
Yeah.
uh, uh, supporting alternative medicine. The king has influence, but very little direct power when it comes to healthcare.
Hmm.
And in America, the direct power is quite undeniable.
Yeah. Now, I believe that I'm right in saying that the Queen used to use homeopathy and was interested in these sorts of things as well, the late Queen. Have you picked up any sense that William or others have had any interest in this sort of thing?
Uh, as far as I know, they're all into it. Maybe less outspokenly, less enthusiastically, but as far as I know, they're all into it. The late Queen um, never talked about it, or very, very rarely talked about it,
Hmm.
but definitely was always traveling with homeopathic drugs. She had a royal homeopath at her side.
Yeah.
Um, King Charles doesn't have a royal homeopath. He has Michael Dixon.
Yes. It's interesting. There's Craig in Stockdale who's actually involved in the Norwegian Republic campaign, and the Norwegian king's son-in-law is apparently a shaman, and he sells medallions that supposedly cure cancer by aligning your chakras, whatever that means. So I don't know whether you've heard of these medallions that supposedly cure
Yeah,
cancer.
yeah. Of course, I've heard about them. I didn't know that the Norwegian king sells them. I'm surprised he needs the money. And
I
I
think
hope
it's his
they have,
son-in-law that is
I
he was
hope I
charming.
hope they haven't given one to Prince Charles.
I would be surprised. But this is the point: is that, and I think you got to be careful commenting on people's actual health problems. But it is an important point that they push these ideas until they get sick, and then all of a sudden they get the right treatment.
Yeah. The trouble is that they have uh, too much very poor advice around them.
Mm,
Prince Charles, in my view, um, has, as long as I'm observing the situation, surrounded himself with extremely poor advice.
yeah, which has always been the case. I think it goes back a long way that he's had some very questionable um,
Yeah, yeah.
mentors.
I suppose powerful people uh, uh, don't want to hear opposition. They want to hear how wonderful they are.
Yes, and I get the impression. I mean, as you said, you get invited to meet him, and there's 500 people in the room. But I've heard stories that if you do try and question him, he doesn't take kindly to it, and he will just walk away and ignore you. Which is a life of being told that you're right, and whatever you say is correct, and
Mm.
so on.
Which is a pity, because if he has strong beliefs, um, that's fine. But then there should be a strong discussion.
Yeah.
One mustn't treat one's beliefs as dogmas.
I mean, does it frustrate you? I mean, this is, you work in a very um, uh, critical sort of field where you have to think critically, you have to be prepared to challenge ideas, and you have to obviously study an awful lot, and you have to, earn these incredible qualifications and so on. And then the royals step in and become patrons of these charities or patrons of a hospital. And the other day, Aberdeen University was wishing Camilla a happy birthday because she's the chancellor of the Aberdeen University, having achieved 1 O level. I mean, does it bother you that people of such limited education and intellect are being sort of given the wing of a hospital named after them, and the chancellorships and so on?
Yeah, Camilla also goes to Indian retreat repeatedly, sometimes with Charles, where the doctor in charge is Ayurvedic and homeopathic physician, and there they sort of fill their batteries as they might see it, and eat vegetarian food, and are being treated with all sorts of weird stuff.
Yeah. And there's one question which is slightly, I guess, advice, I suppose. It's from John Davy about things like some of these remedies, whether there's any justification for them in terms of the placebo effect, which I think you have talked about in Trick or Treat, which is definitely worth buying.
Yeah,
If people haven't read it.
that's an interesting argument. People often say that uh, it doesn't matter, even if it's just a placebo effect. If it helps the patient, that's fine. Uh, that is bonkers. Uh, because if you're ill and I give you something that actually works, by
Yeah,
which I mean beyond placebo, and I do this with kindness, empathy, understanding, and enough time, you'll benefit from a placebo effect, won't you?
as well as
Because,
the actual effect of
yeah, and
yeah,
plus the actual effect. Now,
yeah,
if you turn this around, just giving a placebo would be cheating you out of what I call the specific effect of a real treatment.
yeah.
So the argument homeopathy is okay because it helps via placebo effect is, in my view, not valid.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think this is the understanding or misunderstanding of placebos, is that you will still get that even if from a conventional medicine, you also get the placebo effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's basically a freebie with any good medicine.
Yeah, indeed. Um, yeah, and someone asking again about the vice chancellor and why someone like that would um, buckle under that kind of pressure. I think we've sort of touched on that. There's a few other questions. There's a few people sort of saying that they sympathise with what you've gone through, and well done for standing up for all this, and challenging these people, because I think people, particularly people watching this, I think are very keen to see people challenge.
Now, I think it was worthwhile.
Yeah,
Firstly, of course, because of the course,
yeah,
and the truth has an intrinsic value, but also it brought me a lot of friends, the better type of friends.
good. Good. Yes, I think it's given you a really good reputation. You haven't stopped either. I think you made that clear after you left the university that you were going to carry on pushing this point and arguing this case. And of course, your book is part of that. So we are coming to the end, but I just want to say a huge thank you for coming on Beyond the Royal Headlines. It's been really interesting. Got loads of interesting comments from people that clearly found it fascinating. And just again to everybody, this is available on Republic's website, republic.org.uk/uh, um, shop, along with a whole bunch of other books, of course, and other merchandise, t-shirts, and so on. And I think, if you still running your website?
I have a blog which
Yep.
is just Edzard Ernst in one word.com.
Right, easy to find, and we will put that and the link to the shop in the description on the YouTube channel if anybody wants to find it later. So yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's been very interesting. And that's it from
It
us.
was fun, and good luck with your campaign.
Thank you very much. And yeah, we will get there, and yeah, we will one day be a monarchy and homeopathy-free world. So that'll be good for all of us. But yeah, thank you very much, and yeah, we'll see everybody again next month. Thank you.
Cheers.